Why do so many people relapse who go to treatment, who go to a rehab? We all know that person. I was one of those people. um, Treatment has been an abysmal failure in the United States and now in the West in general, Europe and places like that, Australia. It's been an abysmal failure for nearly 80 years now. We spend more on treatment today than we ever have in the history of mankind, and our overdose rates in Western culture are higher than they've ever been as well. So we're doing something wrong. Now, what is wrong is fundamentally we're teaching people that they have a disease that they don't actually have. There is no disease of addiction. Now, I know you might be saying, well, that's not true. Of course, there's a disease of addiction. Nobody would want to behave this way. Well, just because there are heavy consequences for people's habits doesn't mean it's involuntary. This is important. Just because there are consequences and a steep price to pay for one's actions, like shooting heroin or whatever it might be, doesn't mean that activity or that habit is involuntary or caused by a disease, caused by some external force, some nebulous force called addiction. So addiction, when we define it as a compelled behavior, as something that we don't have control over, is wrongheaded. That's the wrong idea. It's hard for people to understand who don't really enjoy drugs and substances and fetishes and things like that. It's very hard for those people to understand why somebody who does like that enjoys it so much and is willing to pay such a steep price for it. And so rehab becomes this sort of justified thing that people go to make everybody happy. And also, frankly, to get over their problem. Here's the issue, though. When you go, you're given a disease. Now, why? Why are you given something that is so not empowering, disempowering? And the question is, why is that? Why are we handed a disease that we don't have? And the answer to that is very simple, and that is health insurance. Health insurance needs a diagnostic code. And without the disease or a disorder of some type present, there's no diagnostic code in which to bill for. And the treatment centers couldn't make any money, and Medicaid couldn't pay. So it became a system about method of payment. And so when people go to a rehab, person like myself that was stuck in rehab, I was stuck in rehab, an intensive outpatient rehab in a mental hospital for 18 months. When you go there, you're expecting to learn something of value. And what you learn is that I should not drink, go to meetings, and that I have a disease for the rest of my life. Well, how is that going to inspire me to change my life? It actually makes drinking and drugging look more appealing. It actually makes it look more appealing. And any of you out there who have been to rehab multiples of times know that what I'm saying is true. Not to mention you meet your best contacts at rehab because everybody's got the same problem. It's never been a wise idea to pull a whole bunch of people that are extremely vulnerable, tell them that they're never going to be okay. They're always going to have a disease that they don't have, and that they're always going to struggle. They're never going to find anything that is quite as wonderful as the drugs they've been doing. They're always going to feel deprived. They're always going to be different than everybody else, and then expect them to do well. That's insane. The sad part is none of that is true. So is it any wonder that you take somebody who is having a hard time, is wondering why they're doing what they're doing, feels a tremendous amount of probably legal pressure, family pressure, relationship pressure, financial pressure. Throw them into a cauldron of negativity. If you've ever been in treatment, it's a pretty negative place. And then tell them, oh, it's never really going to get better. It's always going to be a struggle. Good luck, you know? And then you sit in the hot seat and you go to the group therapy and you talk about drinking and drugging all the time. And then they say, but you can't have that because you're different. You're an addict. You're an alcoholic. So now we start the whole labeling of people. And then you start to identify as this thing. this thing called an alcoholic, this thing called an addict, where you need to get clean. The implication is you're a dirty, shameful person. And so you go through this entire process over and over, and then you go to AA meetings, NA meetings, CA meetings, and you're meeting the same people. You're hearing the same stories of powerlessness. The drug has the power, you don't. These are all myths. We cover all this in the book, by the way, in the Freedom Model. We debunk all of this mythology that I'm talking about here. But the reason I'm going over this is so you understand that when somebody goes to rehab, they're not learning how not to get high. They're learning that they're broken and that they're always going to be subservient and a minion to treatment for the rest of their lives. That makes drinking and drugging look more appealing in comparison. Nobody wants to be deprived of the thing that the rehab just built up even bigger. They actually raise the status of the drug in your mind as your only relief, and that you're always going to crave. Talk about a setup. Now, once you're set up in this way, they've built the drug up. You're craving it now. You're thinking about it constantly. They tell you you're thinking about it constantly. What do you do when you get out? Your tolerance is low because you haven't gotten high for 28 days. You go take a shot and you die because your tolerance isn't there. You overdose. Or your supply ran out. Your supplier is different now and you get fentanyl and you're done. This is why our overdose rates are so high. One of the factors, one of the major factors. So the reason that people, if we were to summarize it, the reason that people suffer relapses, in a better, more accurate way of saying it, is choosing to get high again, is because they see no way out that's better. Treatment doesn't offer you a better alternative. Now, what's interesting is in the 5% of people that manage to eke out a survival mode in recovery, some of those people do find happiness in spite of what they've learned. And that's important to know. It's in spite of all this negative crap. So do I dislike treatment? I don't dislike anybody. I think most of the people involved in treatment are trying to help people. They just have the wrong information. It took me 27 years and 470 pages for me, Michelle, and Stephen Slate to write this book and debunk all of this mythology that keeps people in the dark and keeps them confused as to why they're doing what they're doing. So, yeah, rehab's not the answer. It's never been the answer. It's an 80-year-old industry that's been an abysmal failure. It's got skyrocketing costs, skyrocketing overdose rates. It's got a higher than normal death rate, a higher than normal suicide rate, and you're at the highest chance for quote unquote relapse or choosing to get high immediately after you leave the facility. Would we call that a success? I call that insane, and it's time for a change. It's time to change that. So it's a setup. It's a setup for repeat customers, folks, until the family is just bilked of all their money and hope. And there's much better ways. Ironically, the number one way that people moderate to non-problematic levels and or abstain is through deciding to, without treatment. It's common. It happens with boring regularity. People quit all the time. It's only when you get sucked into the treatment trap that you start to take on these identities, these false identities, this false disease, this false disorder, this false need for recovery protocols, this false need for endless medications, endless meetings, endless rehabs, therapeutic communities, halfway houses, three-quarter houses. All this apparatus is a waste of time and resources and life. So it's time for a change. Don't be sucked into the treatment trap. Move past it. We explain all this in the book. So read the book, take a look at our workshops, whatever. But more than anything, know that you're not broken. You can get past this. You can moderate successfully. And anybody that tells you you can't, doesn't understand the reality of the research and the reality of how people get past this problem every day all across the world. The research is on your side, and your own mind is the answer. When they tell you that you can't think for yourself, your best thinking got you there, that's your best thinking in confusion got you there. That's your best thinking with the wrong information got you there. That's your best thinking being told that you're a broken, hapless, diseased, forever screwed up person in a veil of shame and guilt and misery, and that you need to get clean because you're dirty. That's what keeps you in the trap. But you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have the wrong information. And if you're a family listening to this, if you doubt any of this, read our family book or read this book, listen to the audio book, watch our podcast, the Addiction Solution Podcast. It's all there for you. All right. So I hope that this was helpful. And I know that it touched some nerves out there. And I know it might rattle your cage a little bit if you've been to treatment and you think that that's the answer. And maybe you got well in treatment. Well, that's because you decided to. Ultimately, it all came back down to your decision, didn't it? You couldn't have done it without your own decision. So we all move past this problem the same way. We decide to internally. It's an inside job. It's not an external rehab or recovery protocol that did it for you. Give yourself the credit. You're the one that did it. All right, everybody. I hope that was helpful. Take care.